We're sitting in today with Rachel Polson, partner at Baker Tilly, Virchow Krause. Most of us just say Baker Tilly, which is essentially a CPA firm.
It was great. So high energy, had me engaged the entire time.
I think what's great about Kevin's message is that, no matter how naturally talented you are, no matter how great you can be, you can always keep striving for that next level. And even, if you become complacent, you might not even realize you've done it. But Kevin really helps you realize, that there's so much more that you can do. If you take a step back, really reevaluate what you're doing and what you're not doing, you can take it to the next level.
I loved his message about God's gift to you and your gift back, and he's just so down to earth and just a helpful, wonderful man.
Really, I think you can put him in front of anybody, and you're going to be inspired, you're going to be motivated, you're going to want to go out there, and you're going to want to start, reaching for that next level today.
Hey, thanks so much for joining in to the Leadership is Personal podcast, bringing you real-world solutions to real-world challenges in anywhere from 3 to 10-minute increments. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.
Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Rachel, as I was saying to Rachel briefly, we like to have a conversation simply about leadership and bringing to bear various different perspectives and takes on leadership. And you being a woman leader, I'm certain, wherever you go, there you are, and certainly you show up. And so talk to me a little bit about that. How does you being a woman CPA, which quite frankly, I can't say I've seen a whole lot of those. How do you show up?
Right. Well, it's interesting, first of all, Kevin, on how you say with what you've seen with people that you talk to is that whole piece about the vulnerability and about how you see that more with women versus men. Because I don't necessarily, whether it's a man or woman that's working with me on a team, I don't look at them any differently to try to inspire them. And so I don't see that I experience that part. But, you would ask the question, like, how do I show up? Every day I show up with a smile and my game face on. And, it's like, okay, we've got stuff to get done today. Let's, have a positive attitude, enjoy it while we're doing it. A lot of things that we do with being in the customer service business is it's stressful. You've got timelines and things. And I feel like if I can at least show up and try to be positive about it, because you get to a point where you're down at a deadline or a crunch time and no one's enjoying it. But at least if you're trying to make it a better situation and positive, that, why do we have to all be miserable as we're working through it?
I totally get it. Let me add a little bit of clarity or color around my statement.
Sure.
I led private client group, strategy and product development while I was at U.S. Bank. And one of the studies that was done, Lord knows we purchased a myriad of different studies, but one of the studies that was done that talked about from even as an example, a financial services perspective, and based on our acculturation in this country, men are really acculturated, or we'll say it statistically was shown that they will fake it until they make it. Whereas if you ask a woman a question in this scenario, about investing, they will say, I don't know, but I'll find you the answer, right? And so there's just a myriad of different studies that sort of showed that sort of behavior, or the manifestation of how men versus how young boys versus young girls are acculturated. And so that, we see it all the time. That shows up all the time, right? If there's a position out there that's open, for men it's applying, you might have 6 out of 10 criteria. I'm going to go for it. Whereas women, which has been statistically proven, if they don't have 9 or 10 out of 10, they're just not going to try for it, right? And so, that's why I wanted to know, how do you show up? And I got to imagine, at least in my experience, I've not encountered a whole lot of women CPAs. And so I'm always intrigued by that.
I have heard that stat before, and I have, seen that in my everyday, when I'm working with team members or even at clients and things. You do see that piece about that part of when the women are going through, like, say, a job description and they want to be promoted, and they're looking at it and they're saying exactly what you're talking about. Oh, I don't have all 10 of them. and seen it before where a guy would say, "Oh, I've got 3, I'm good, I should be promoted."
Oh, that's right.
So we have had those conversations internally, and then also too making sure internally when we are promoting people that we're not also applying that of giving people a harder grade or assessment based on what they're if they're male or female.
Well, that happens all the time, right? As a father of 2 daughters, I am uber sensitive to that, right? And making certain that they're getting that sort of messaging that says, you're enough and you can do it. I would see it all the time, right? You sit in leadership meetings and, the males are basically promoted on potential, whereas the women are promoted on, they've done it for so long, you just might as well give them the role, right? I mean, it happens all the time. Right. One of the other things that I did read your article that you wrote on mentoring. And so how do you mentor? Talk to me a little bit about mentoring, because certainly the preponderance of my listeners are probably a bit more senior in their careers and mid-career. And so, what would you offer? What would you share with them around mentoring?
Yeah, that is a good topic. And that's a very hot topic of people that, are talking about, do I need a mentor? Should I be a mentee? Should I be the mentor? Do I need someone to advocate for me? So I do, hear conversations about that. Mm-hmm. And I think the one part for people who are senior is a lot of times they say, I still need a mentor. I still need someone to coach me and help me. But the one part that I have found out with being a mentor for people is how much I get out of it, especially when I'm working with anyone who's, they don't always have to be younger than you because you can do reverse mentoring too. But if I'm working with anyone who's younger and they're telling me about things that they're working with or struggling with, that it always gives me that perspective of how do I bring that into my own, team and the people that I'm working with to think about if this person is telling me that they're struggling with X, Y, and Z, well, maybe someone I'm working with directly is having that same piece. And how do I, curb that, conversation to let them know it's okay to talk about those things. Mm-hmm. And I think the other part about being a mentor is really to listen. Is, one of the biggest things of, someone really wants, a lot of times they want someone just to listen and have that, resource for, bouncing ideas off of and getting a different perspective. Most of the people that I've been mentoring lately are outside of Baker Tilly. And so, when you're mentoring someone who's outside your company, you can give them more honest feedback, especially if they're looking for promotion or moving on, versus if it's someone internally who says, hey, I want to look for a different job. Well, that's always harder internally because you don't want to lose those good people.
Rachel, you said something quite interesting in that last statement. You said you're mentoring people outside of the company and you can be more open or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that. What do you mean there? Right. Is it a different sort of mentorship or a different sort of transparency that transpires when you're dealing with someone inside of your organization versus outside of your organization?
Oh, sure. I think what I was meaning there is that for the person as a mentee, that I sometimes feel like they can be more transparent with what they share with you versus, I'm sharing it with a boss or a supervisor, will it get back internally to someone? So I was thinking more from their perspective.
Gotcha. I will say, where I've gained the greatest amount of support, mentorship and credibility is when I am blatantly honest with the more senior folks. The more senior, the more honest, because I seem to find that it's hard for them to get that sort of direct and open and honest feedback. Certainly, oftentimes when a Rachel is showing up, here comes a partner, we must clean it up, we have to pretty it up, we have to make it pristine and sort of not allow the partner to see our warts a little bit, if you will. And so talk to me a little bit about, how open and transparent of feedback do you want from your subordinates?
Oh, I would love that type of feedback. And, even having discussions of the, hey, I'm really stressed with work, or I can't be put on any more projects, even those kinds of dialogues, because, and that's the one piece where people feel like they can take it all on, or they don't feel like there's another option. And there's always another option, because we'd rather, have our employees, stay and, and be employees, and because they're doing a good job, than have it be where, they end up leaving because they feel like they can't talk to anyone and no one, cares or will listen. I do agree that one part about being genuine is important, because we're all people. And, at the end of the day, we're all people. We all go home to whatever it is, our family, our dog, whatever that is. And it's like, we still want to be able to go home and say we did a good job and we're proud of what we did. And I feel like that's still the driving factor, that people don't show up and say, hey, I'm going to do a bad job today. I just don't feel like that's what we do.
Yeah. We hope they don't show up to do a bad job, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, so that's what I mean. I feel like people go home and they want to feel like they added value and they did something great to, help the company or a client.
Absolutely. What scares you the most as a leader?
That's a good one. Probably, what did I miss? With whether it's delivering a product, not providing the service to a client, not helping someone with, a goal or initiative that they were working on. I think that's probably what scares me the most is, you try to cover everything, but we're human and we make mistakes and we miss things. So I think that's sometimes what makes me more nervous is what's the magnitude of what I missed? How is it a big deal? The one part is with the accounting world, no one's going to die with, if you miss something, which makes it different than in other industries. But I still think that's one of the parts where, as I noted, we're all trying to do the right thing and a good job. That's probably what makes me the most nervous is, what didn't happen that should have happened.
If you could go back in time, Rachel, and reverse one thing that you maybe missed or you got wrong or that you feel like you did differently or you could have done differently, what would it be?
When we were talking before about, the women and the men and feeling, that you can do it type of thing, probably having those conversations with my younger self of the whole fact of, you are good enough. You do deserve this. You're smart. You know what you're doing, and having that, just having that confidence. I feel like as I've gotten older and more acquainted with my role, that that has it's happened naturally. But I think that's the one part where when I mentioned I will try to inspire other people so they know they can do it. I think that's one of the things. So it's like I don't want them to struggle and have those self-doubts like I had as a younger person.
Gotcha. So how then does the younger Rachel coming along today, find that sort of confidence, if you will? What can they do in order to make certain that they don't have those challenges that you did? What would you maybe do differently, or how can they do that? I certainly think mentorship is one of them, one of the things you've already written about. But how might they do that?
I think mentorship is one, and then also probably spending more time, reflecting on strengths versus weaknesses is one. You can do it and feel inspired. I spent a lot of time reading, different books over the course of the years of, different perspectives, and maybe starting reading those earlier so that, what you're facing as a challenge so that you're not alone. I think sometimes you feel you're alone and you're not. And that's the other part, is reaching out for others for support.
So it sounds to me like you're a bit of a reader. So now I have to ask you if you read this one book. It's one of my must reads. It's called You Are Badass. Have you read that?
Yes, I have read that one. I actually read that one with one of my mentees.
Really?
Yes, that she and I read that together, and we took, one of the chapters for each time that we would meet, and we talk about it, and then, then we go on with whatever else topics we had.
So I talk about this book pretty often. What was your, sort of overarching takeaways, or if you were to summarize a bit of it, what would you take from that book? If you were to do the You Are a Badass book review, what do you think?
Oh, geez. Okay, now you're testing me, because it's been over a year, I think almost 2 years since I read it. But I think the one part that I remember talking with my mentee about was just having so many sections were relatable, where it was like, oh yeah, it's like, you can own the room, you can do these things. And I remember us talking about that and trying to inspire her as she was going into some meetings and things. So to give a better book review, that's probably really hard for me, just because of how long it's been since I read it.
No worries at all. I think, it certainly does cover, the topic of, sort of stopping the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and that sort of thing. So I get it. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of you can own the room. I have a number of mentees that are young women sort of coming along or early in their career, moving, into that, stepping into that executive rank. And a lot of times it really is, I think it's just part of our acculturation, right? We rear young men and young women very differently. And so I think the more that we can push young women to be outside of their comfort zone, the better the world will be, right? I think that they have a very different perspective, if you will,
right,
that men just don't have and can't bring, right? And
it's interesting of how you talk about your daughters, because I'm actually raising 2 sons, and but so that hopefully that with they see that their mom is achieving things as a leadership, that they will just see that as the norm, so that it won't be rare to them to have a woman in that role, so that when they're in the workforce, that won't be more uncommon type of thing. So I'm hoping that will help inspire them, so that they don't have that unconscious bias right away.
Yeah. Well, we all know that if not that, something else, we all have those sort of unconscious biases, right? That,
oh yeah, exactly.
Our highlights and lowlights and that sort of thing. Funny. What is the highlight of your career?
I think probably becoming partner is probably the highlight of it. It wasn't one of those goals when I had first started working in public accounting where I said, oh, I'm going to be a partner. Certain people have that as a goal. And it just, it just kind of kept going along. And, a couple of the partners here were just very, supportive of that. And, it was just like, hey, you can do this. And it was like, okay, and having that opportunity to do that. And when I reflect back now that it's been 12 years, it just is crazy that it's already been 12 years. It doesn't feel like that.
Wow.
And, and it gave me the opportunity to, be an entrepreneurial, which is kind of what I wanted to do, is to, own your own book of business, run your own type of thing. And being a partner gives you that opportunity, because you're, just kind of owning all the things that you're working with, whether it's the customer, the projects, the client service, getting new business. So I think that's the part, is that, it's got that excitement and the challenge associated.
You're not just owning the room, you're owning the business. Love it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. So tell me something though, because you said, I didn't have that early on. Right. I think, again, we go back to that sort of acculturation, right? I just want to do a good job every day and not worry about it. And so, why didn't you have that early on? If I put you and all of your other partners in a room, would they have sort of the same experience? Would they also say, yeah, no, I didn't really want to be a partner? Or how many of them would say, hell yeah, I started this and I planned on being a partner from day one? What? Yeah.
There are those people that do show up and they say that. And when we're doing, interviews with the people who are graduates from colleges, we're like, that's great. That's great. That. And I don't know if it was that I didn't want to be, a partner not thinking that I could do it versus being more of the whole sense of, I think I had visions of, I wanted to be a CFO somewhere. I wanted to be at a company type of thing. And then realizing, I could do an exciting and challenging job here too. So I don't know if that was why, because it wasn't I can't do it type of thing is why I didn't say it. It was more of a, just like you said, doing a good job and kind of going through the day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally get it. Rachel, if you had to give our listeners 2 pieces of cogent advice, what would it be?
I think one thing I would say is to share honest stories and honest situations that we deal with as leaders. I think sometimes people think it's easy, and it's not. And to let people know that even as leaders, we still struggle and have challenges. And, like how I made the comment, I try to show up with a positive attitude and a smile every day. There's some days that's easier than others. So I think that's one thing I would, share with people is the whole fact of, I think it's okay to let people know that, you're struggling or, today's a tough day. And I think the other
comment, Rachel, what I heard in that comment was one word. What
did you hear?
Fun. Vulnerability. Sounds like you're fine with being vulnerable. Is that accurate?
Right. I would say I'm not fine with that piece. I mean, that is something I struggle with because of, you're trying to lead and inspire other people. And so I think it is hard to be vulnerable. I wouldn't say I'm very good at that.
Well, maybe you're better at it than you even think you are. Because I've heard that consistently in our conversation in terms of your feedback, in terms of, what you would encourage folks to do. In fact, you started out from the very beginning with what I would say was vulnerability. And honestly, I think it's the one thing that that leaders endear the people that follow them with. The more vulnerable you are, the more, at least in my experience, the more vulnerable you are, the more endeared your folks are to you.
Right. Yeah. Because they know that you get it, and the whole idea that it's not easy type of thing. It's not hey, life is perfect type of situation.
Well, you said it. You put your game face on, and you go in, and you get her done. And a lot of times that game face doesn't include the face that says, "Oh shit, this is going to be tough." Right? I mean, a lot of times we want to hide that, right?
Yep. Yeah, that game face sometimes is in the car on the ride home.
Yeah. And maybe on the way in, right? Going,
right.
Wow, this is going to be a tough day, right? Yep.
Or when I'm doing my morning workout class, hitting the boxing bag, when I do my kickboxing, those kinds of things.
Wow, that's awesome. So you actually get up in the morning and work out, huh?
Oh yeah, 5:15. Yep.
Ooh, wow. Yeah,
I learned long ago that was the only time I had for me. So I just, make it happen. By the end of the day, you're too tired and other things get in the way. So 5:15, not many people are up bothering you.
You mentioned that's the only time you had for you. How important is that? How important is that in town for you?
Oh, it's one of those non-negotiable things. It's on the calendar, and it's an appointment, just like it would be a client appointment or anything else, where that time for you or your family, whatever it is, people need to schedule that and keep that, just kind of covet it and hold on to it. That was one thing I talked with one of our people here of the whole fact. I'm like, it's like people don't need to know what you're doing. If you have something you love to do, make that your appointment, and it's non-negotiable. You're doing that. Yeah. And that's what needs to happen, because, it doesn't make you show up any better if you don't have that time for you, because then basically you burn out and you're not showing up as your best self.
Right? You show up worse
right.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Your own time is very, very important, at least in my book, right? You gotta, I like to say, within my methodology that I use, I call that the wellness, or how do you recharge your batteries, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you recharge your batteries? One of the things that I talk about from a leadership standpoint all the time is really you lead from a point of your value system, right? I often ask the question, hey, when you don't have the time to do anything, you're just flying on sheer instinct. And it's your unconscious competence that's sort of leading the way. That instinct, really comes from your value system. And so if I had to ask you, what was one value that you held dear, what would it be?
I think it would be integrity. That's like just on the whole fact of, talking about, doing things, I made that reference before about, if I made a mistake or something, just owning it, having integrity encompasses so many things of the, just we do, you do the right thing and you make it happen. And it's sometimes not what people want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it encompasses, the honest feedback and being genuine. There's so many things probably related to it that really resonates with me.
I'm really cracking up here, right? Because integrity happens to be my number one value.
It is. Okay.
It is. And one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do, if they've not done it, is really think about what is that value, and then, provide that description around what that value means, right? So for me, it's integrity, and that means that I'm always authentic and I'm transparent, sometimes to a fault. I'm always open, right? And, that means leading the harder right, doing the harder right, sometimes saying the harder right? Not lying, not cheating, et cetera, et cetera. For all of you in listener land, if you've not done it, I would simply say, take the time and identify the value, your 1, 2, or 3 values that you do have. My coach encouraged me to do it. And it's one of the most valuable things that I've done, to actually sit down and think about, what values that I have. And you talk about non-negotiables,
Right.
I would say the easiest way to also maybe think about it is, what pisses you off when you see a certain behavior in other individuals. And a lot of times it's just in that moment when it sort of flies counter to your value system that really pisses you off. Like, God knows I can't stand someone that lies, that really, I guess it's counter to the value system.
And Kevin, that's so interesting that you say that, because that is exactly how I feel. Dishonesty is totally non-negotiable with me. It is, when I see other leaders doing that, I lose the respect for them because of it. Yeah. It's just like it's interesting that you say that.
And your value system.
Yeah. Right. And like how you talked about having people actually write down things. I think that's the one part as leaders, is sometimes reflecting on that is hard, because one, you have to set aside time to do that. And two, it, forces you to, think about those things of the, like when you ask the question, what is leadership to you? So those are things that as leaders, I don't know how much we actually spend that time, self-reflecting.
I think we have to. Certainly my clients, I'm a coach, and, my clients, I share with them, they have to take that time to do that, because, you don't learn when you're in a situation. Even when you're flying, some would say by the seat of your pants. I say by your instinct and gut and sort of unconscious competence. You really learn when you reflect. We don't learn being in something. It's when we step back after it's over, when we're outside of it, and we step back and reflect on it. That's when we actually learn, when we can sort of process it. And so I think as leaders, we have to reflect, In fact, my former CEO, when I was at MBNA America Bank way back when, it's now Bank of America, Bruce said that one of the things that he did every single day was he thought about his day, and he thought about what he could do better if he had the opportunity to do it over again. And this was an exercise that he did every day at the end of his day, and I think, as a leader, I think we have to be somewhat ritualistic in some instances, right? So before I grab my phone in the morning, I begin the day in gratitude. I mean, we all wake up and grab that phone, right? It's just I know many leaders who don't wake up and grab the phone and see what's going on. I don't know, maybe leaders that are out kicking boxing bags at 5:15 may not.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yep, and the gratitude one. I know that's an exercise. I'd read that book, Gratitude Jar, of one. Where every day you do that, and it is a good process because when you start reflecting on it, there's a lot of things to be thankful for, even if your day didn't go very well.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, hell, you could be thankful just for being on the right side of the grass, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's definitely an alternative. Look, Rachel, I don't want to take up a whole bunch of your time. I really do appreciate you spending some time with me this morning, and hopefully it wasn't too taxing on you. I don't want to pull you away from all the work and the people that need you. If you want to leave us with one, parting bit of wisdom or any words that you might have, please, what might you share with our listening audience?
I would just say embrace every day as an opportunity.
Embrace every day as an opportunity. I like it. Absolutely. That's a great reminder for all of us. Rachel, again, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much for your time, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Have a great one.
If you join us here each and every week, you'll get a tidbit of information and insight that'll help you be the best version of yourself. Come back next week. Be sure to join us on Facebook within the Facebook group. Check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. Kevin D. Wright. Look us up. Check us out. Link to us online. Love to hear from you. Unlike some of the other podcasts, I want to hear directly from you, and I will answer your question. There's no question too tough, so together we can solve it. Stop back and tell a friend. Leadership is personal. Here's the better results.